Tonight, the Bridgeport Fire Department is mourning the death of a firefighter, Terrence Cramer. He was killed over the weekend, and the suspect is now in custody. As Naveen Dhaliwal reports, Kramer's heartbroken family is left questioning why this happened.
Imagine waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone in your bedroom. You're barely conscious. Your eyes are still adjusting to the dark. And before you can even process what's happening, a punch lands on your face, and then you hear a sound that changes everything. A gunshot, and the person lying next to you says 4 words that will haunt you for the rest of your life. I just got shot. That is exactly what happened in the early hours of March 29th, 2026. In a quiet home in Stratford, Connecticut, a woman woke up to her worst nightmare, and a man who had done nothing wrong. A man who showed up every single day to protect strangers from burning buildings, lost his life in the one place where he should have been completely safe, a bedroom. His name was Terrence Cramer, 41 years old, a Bridgeport firefighter with 9.5 years on the job, a father of 2 young boys, and by every account from everyone who knew him, one of those rare people who just made a room better by walking into it. His fellow firefighter J.C. Razik said it plainly. Whenever Terrence walked in the morning, everybody's spirit lifted. Just like that. That was the kind of man he was. He wasn't loud about it. He wasn't the type to demand attention or walk around like he was doing you a favor by showing up. He was humble. He was warm. He had a smile that apparently never left his face. His assistant fire chief, Armando Cora, described watching him go into burning buildings as a nozzle man. Fearless, no hesitation, doing exactly what was expected of him without flinching. That was Terrence at work. And at home, he had one priority above everything else. His boys. His 10-year-old son Jackson spoke after his father's death, and what he said was so simple it broke people's hearts. He said his dad loved being a firefighter because saving people made him feel good, and that his dad always wanted to be a firefighter from when he was young. A 10-year-old describing his father in the most pure and honest way possible, completely unaware how deeply those words were landing on the people listening. Terrence had also recently started something new in his personal life. He had begun seeing a woman in February 2026, just weeks before all of this happened. A fresh start, something that felt good, something that by all accounts was going nowhere but forward. But someone else had a very different idea about that. Before we go any further, if you're new here, this is Shadow Crime, and we don't let cases like this get buried. If this story matters to you, hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss when we drop. Now, let's get back into it.
Tonight, the Bridgeport Fire Department is mourning the death of a firefighter, Terrence Cramer. He was killed over the weekend, and the suspect is now in custody. As Naveen Dhaliwal reports, Kramer's heartbroken family is left questioning why this happened.
As Shania Neal Walker talks about her stepfather, Terrence Cramer.
Such a sweet person, very brave, very courageous.
She beams with love, admiration, and then the unimaginable loss.
Very heartbreaking. There's so many questions I have as far as why, how, answers that I may never get.
It was early Saturday when a 911 call came in, and EMS crews found Kramer bleeding with a gunshot wound here on Feely Street in Stratford. Despite the efforts of first responders, the 41-year-old father of 3 did not survive.
He didn't deserve it, though. He didn't deserve it.
Kramer served on the Bridgeport Fire Department for nearly a decade, earning respect for his dedication and his commitment to protecting lives. Colleagues say he was always the first to respond when someone was in danger. His 10-year-old son Jackson knew firefighting was his dad's passion.
He liked saving people because it made him feel good, and he just always wanted to be a firefighter.
Police have now arrested 41-year-old Jabari Bush in connection to Kramer's killing. He's now charged with murder, home invasion, and criminal possession of a firearm. Now, authorities haven't said what led up to the shooting, but Kramer's family says they're focused on his memory.
I have mercy. I am not God, and I do not judge. It left us very devastated. Don't know how to move forward. It's a tough situation.
A beloved brother, son, and a friend whose loss leaves a hole in the hearts of a community he served. In Bridgeport, Naveen Dhaliwal, CBS News, New York.
And Bridgeport's mayor requested all flags at municipal buildings be flown at half-staff this week.
Now, let me tell you about the other person at the center of this story. The woman at the heart of it all. She had been in a relationship with a man named Jabari Bush for about 5 years. 5 years. That is not a short situationship or a casual thing. That is a real, committed stretch of time where two people build a life together, or at least try to. She had actually been living in a home that Bush owned in West Haven, Connecticut. He was on the 3rd floor. She was on the 2nd, close enough to call it together, distant enough to show the cracks. But somewhere along the way, things fell apart. She made a decision that a lot of people in difficult relationships struggle to make. She left. She moved to Stratford around March of 2025 and tried to start over. But here is where it gets complicated, because leaving someone physically and leaving them emotionally are two very different things. The relationship kept getting pulled back into on-again, off-again territory, mostly at his insistence. She would try to close the door, and he would find a way to wedge his foot back in. Then January 2026 came, and this time, she was done. The relationship ended for good, or at least, that was her decision. Jabari Bush had a completely different response to that. By March 2026, he was calling her at what investigators described as a constant rate, so constant that she had to block his number. Think about that for a second. It got so overwhelming that blocking became the only option, but even that did not stop him. 2 days before the murder, he showed up at her workplace uninvited, just appeared, and the day before the murder, he showed up at her home unannounced. The two spoke briefly and he left. She probably thought that was the end of it. It was not. Now I want you to really sit with this for a moment, because this pattern has a name. What Bush was doing, the constant calls, the unexpected appearances at her job, showing up at her home, that is textbook stalking behavior. And the terrifying thing about this kind of behavior is that it almost always escalates. It rarely just stops on its own. The person doing it is not looking for closure. They're looking for control. And when they feel that control slipping away completely, when they find out the person they're obsessing over has genuinely moved on, something in them snaps. That is exactly what happened on the night of March 28th, going into the early hours of March 29th. Ring doorbell footage captured Bush arriving at the woman's home just after midnight. He rang the doorbell 4 times. Nobody answered, but he did not leave. Investigators noted there were no signs of forced entry, meaning the door may have been unlocked, and Bush walked straight in. The woman was asleep in her bedroom with Terrence, 2 people who had only been seeing each other for a matter of weeks, doing nothing wrong, completely unaware that someone had just entered the home, and then the bedroom door opened.
We now know jealousy is the alleged motive in the shooting death of a Bridgeport firefighter.
Tony Aiello was in court earlier today as a judge set bail for the alleged killer at $3 million.
41-year-old Jabari Bush answered Judge Robert Golger quietly. But the arrest warrant says he yelled at his ex-girlfriend early Saturday, quote, "You're here with another man," before punching her and fatally shooting her new boyfriend, Bridgeport Firefighter Terrence Cramer, a divorced father of 2 young boys. Jackson Kramer says his dad loved serving the community.
Because he liked saving people, because it made him feel good, and he just always wanted to be a firefighter.
I remember seeing him at a couple fires where he was a nozzleman and just fearless, going in, doing his job.
You know, we're at a loss for words. Losing somebody like that, I mean, you would see Kramer walk in the morning and your spirits would just lift in the firehouse. So we're all very sad.
Firefighter Kramer was fatally shot at this house in Stratford. Investigators say he was in a bedroom with his girlfriend when Jabari Bush forced his way into the home. The arrest warrant portrays Jabari Bush as a man obsessed with his ex-girlfriend, bombarding her with unwanted phone calls and text messages, allegedly showing up unwanted at her place of work, and 2 days before the shooting at her home in Stratford. Bush has a 2004 conviction for assault, but also a good job as a mechanic and owned a home. The firefighters who attended court say they will surround Kramer's family with support to honor a man who lived up to the motto, brave and beyond. In Bridgeport, Tony Aiello, CBS News, New York.
Police say the suspect fled the scene after the shooting. A few hours later, he contacted an attorney and surrendered without incident to face charges including homicide and home invasion.
What happened next took only seconds, but the damage it left behind will last a lifetime. Bush walked into that bedroom and found exactly what he was afraid of: his ex-girlfriend, the woman he refused to let go of, moving on with someone else. And instead of walking away, instead of doing the hard but necessary thing that every adult has to do when a relationship ends, he lost it completely. He started yelling, something along the lines of, "You're here with another man." And then he punched her in the face, right there in her own bedroom, in her own home, in the middle of the night. And before anything else could happen, before anyone could react or run or scream, he pulled out a gun and fired. Terrence Cramer, a man who ran into burning building for a living, a man who spent nearly a decade making sure strangers made it home safely, was shot in his right inner thigh. He looked at the woman beside him and said, "I just got shot." Those were among his last words. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but there was nothing they could do. At 2:12 in the morning, Terrence Cramer was pronounced dead. Now here's where I need you to really think about the kind of person Jabari Bush is, because after shooting a man dead in cold blood, he did not stay. He ran. He fled the scene and spent the next 15 hours on the run, while Bridgeport firefighters were being told that one of their own was gone, while 2 young boys were waking up to a world without their father in it, while a woman was trying to process the fact that she had just watched someone die right next to her. Stratford's police chief made it very clear that his officers were not standing down. He put it plainly, none of his people were going home until they had this man in custody. And they followed through. Bush was tracked down in Derby, Connecticut, and arrested following a brief vehicle chase. 15 hours after he pulled that trigger, it was over for him. He was charged with murder, home invasion, and criminal possession of a firearm. The judge at his arraignment did not mince words. He described the facts of the case as particularly brutal. Bush is being held on a $3 million bond with his next court date set for April 14th. And it is worth noting that this was not Bush's first time of firearm and violence. He had a prior conviction from the early 2000s for first-degree assault with a firearm after shooting and wounding someone in New Haven. This was not a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern. Meanwhile, more than 60 Bridgeport firefighters packed that courthouse during his arraignment. 60. They showed up in full force not because they had to, but because that is what you do for family. Assistant Chief Armando Cora stood before cameras and said something that stuck with a lot of people. He said they are unified, they are professionals, and they will always show up for each other and for their community. Even in grief, these people showed up, and then there was a response from Terrence's family that honestly stopped me in my tracks. His stepdaughter, Shania, said something that most people would not be capable of saying in that moment. She said they have mercy, that they are not God, that they do not judge, that they wish Bush the best and hope he has time to sit and think about what he did. In the middle of all that pain, that family chose grace. That right there tells you everything about the kind of household Terrence came from and the kind of man he was raising his boys to be. Which brings me to the questions I cannot stop thinking about. How does someone spend 5 years with a person and respond to the end of that relationship with a gun? At what point does love become possession? Because what Bush felt was not love. Love does not break down doors. Love does not throw punches. Love does not pull a trigger. What he felt was ownership. And the moment he realized he no longer had ownership over her life, her choices, or her happiness, he decided that if he could not have her, nobody else was going to either. And Terrence Cramer paid for that with his life. A firefighter, a father, a man whose 10-year-old son told the world that his dad just wanted to save people because it made him feel good. Let that sink in. So I want to ask you directly, do you think the system failed here? Bush had a prior firearms conviction. The warning signs were there in the weeks leading up to this. The constant calls, the workplace visits, the unannounced appearances at her home. At what point should intervention have happened? And could any of it have saved Terrence's life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to know what you think about this one, because this case deserves every conversation it gets. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, you already know what shadow crime is about. We tell the stories that matter. We give victims their voice back. So if you're not subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit that like button. Click the bell so you never miss a drop, and share this one. Because Terrence Cramer's name deserves to be heard.